Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our BBB webinar series. My name is David Arcilla, VP here at the Better Business Bureau of Southeast Florida and the Caribbean. Before we get our presentation started and I introduce the presenters, I just want to go over a few ground rules. Number one, we will be recording the webinar, so if for whatever reason you need to step out or have an emergency, don't worry, we are recording it and we will share the video link via email and we will post it on our YouTube page. So no worries there. Also, we will be holding questions until the end of the presentation. We do have a chat box, so please feel free to drop the questions in there and we will answer them once the presentation is complete. If for whatever reason we are not able to get to your question today, the presenters will provide their contact information and you will be able to reach out to them via whatever information they provide for contact. With that being said, as you can see in the presentation first slide, this presentation is being presented by BB Insurance Marketing. They opened their doors back in 1996. And they have been an accredited business of Better Business Bureau Southeast Florida since 2011. They also have been working with us directly since 2016. And BB Insurance Marketing provides insurance solutions and programs for both businesses and personal needs. Today's presentation on the 4 essential steps to cope with pandemic business risk will focus on the 4 critical areas of risk that every business must address and offers a simple 4-step process to accomplish safe operations during and beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. I think what we have seen a lot of is presentations and webinars focused on what's currently going on, but today will be a different, the presenters today will provide a different look on how to prepare beyond what is currently happening right now. So I will introduce our presenters. Our first presenter is Mr. Doug Levy. He has 20 years of experience as a state licensed insurance agent and risk manager. And Mr. Lee Goldberg has enjoyed a 15-year career as a state licensed insurance agent, risk manager, and consultant. Also on the call, we have the president and CEO of BB Insurance Marketing, Mr. Jason Brown. He'll be more on the back end, but he will come in and out if need be to help the presenters with anything that they might need. So without further ado, I will pass over the reins to Mr. Doug Levy and to Mr. Lee Goldberg.
Yeah, I feel it when I don't press so hard.
Thank you, David. This is Doug Levy, everybody. It looks like we've got a nice group of people here. Everybody should be on mute, or almost everybody on mute. I think, David, we need to mute caller number 4. Can everybody hear me? If you want to just type a yes in the chat box if you can hear me. David, you can hear me as well?
Yes, sir, I can. I will be going on mute right now. And just make sure, as you said, Doug, please, if you're popping in or you need to pop out, just make sure you are on mute. We definitely don't want to disturb the flow of the presentation. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. As David introduced, this is 4 essential steps to cope with pandemic business risks presented by BB Insurance Marketing in collaboration with the Better Business Bureau. So we're really happy to be here today. My name is Doug Levy, and I'm here with my colleague, Lee Goldberg. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of BB Insurance Marketing. I'm a certified insurance counselor. I am a graduate of the University of Florida. And as David mentioned, I've been in the business for about 20 years. My colleague, Lee Goldberg, is our Southeast Regional Director, also a certified insurance counselor, master's degree recipient from the Huizenga School of Business, and has been in our industry of insurance and risk management for about 15 years. So I want to open up by thanking you, all of the people that are attending this webinar, and not just for attending and for giving us your time and for listening to what we have to say, but more importantly, in our line of work, we see local businesses that really care about doing the right thing. And the fact that you're participating in this webinar is a testament to your commitment to your business and to the community and to keeping people safe. And that's really, really important. And so we appreciate that and we thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started, and we do plan on having about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A that David will monitor and show us some questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So your business is your business. What do we mean by that? The somewhat harsh reality right now is that there's no white knight coming to save us. No person, no business is immune from the effects of the virus. No matter what the government does or doesn't do at any level, it's up to you to create your own shield against the risks that your business faces. Your business is your business and nobody else's, right? So risk management, which is what we're talking about today, isn't a very sexy topic, but right now it's a critical one. This is an unprecedented situation, and those of you who focus, buckle down, and take control of the fate of your businesses will be successful. Those who take a wait and see approach, on the other hand, are leaving it up to chance, and we know that we don't really want to leave it up to chance. So you're taking control. You've joined the webinar today. You're on the right track. I'm not going to say this is going to be the most fun webinar you've ever attended, but I do hope that you find it informative, because we're here to help give you the tools that you need to succeed. So our objectives today are to help you cope with COVID-19 related business concerns, hopefully reduce some of the anxiety that you're feeling by providing you with some good information and processes, and really to help you obtain an advantage in business. This isn't just about you learning something to do, go back to work and do whatever you do. It's about getting a leg up either on your competition or where you would have been otherwise. So we really hope that you gain something from this. So when it comes to reopening, there's lots of resources published by OSHA and the CDC about reopening your business. But whatever guidelines and manuals are out there, you need to apply them to your business. There's really no one-size-fits-all solution, right? So here's some examples of the materials that are available on the CDC and OSHA websites. And on top of that, we have some goodies for everyone that's in attendance right now. So we understand how important the reopening process is. And if you email me after the webinar, and our contact information will be up at the end, I will send you these two very, very comprehensive and valuable guides that our risk management team created just for this situation. We have one called Creating a Return to Work Action Plan and the Employer's Guide to COVID-19 HR Toolkit. So we find these to be very, very, very meaningful and useful. And you'll be able to use what you learned today to make these documents work for you. So let's talk a little bit more about what we plan on covering today and why it's important. Your business is poised to get back to normal or to establish a new normal. Some businesses are ready to thrive. Some hope to return to previous levels of activity and prosperity from before the pandemic, and others are fighting to survive. The coronavirus has really already dealt a knockout blow, kind of like Ali did to Sonny Liston here, to many businesses. And the reality is that no matter what your business is doing now, whether you're temporarily closed down or if your business is booming, all businesses that are still standing are on the ropes in one way or another. Many businesses' financial buffers are gone, and with the new concerns we're all facing these days, the margin for error has practically disappeared. So it's more important than ever to carefully manage your business risks so that you can avoid a knockout punch. So what are you going to do about it, right? So what we're here to talk about is a fairly simple process. It may look complicated, but it's not. So if you'll hang in there with us today, we'll show you how you can identify what's important for your business as far as guidelines are concerned. And we'll show you some things that you might not be thinking about that can bite you. So once the knee-jerk reaction is over and everyone has hand sanitizer on the counters and cleans the pens that customers are using to sign receipts and gets the masks for the office and keeps everyone 6 feet away from each other, you need to take a more comprehensive look at what your business needs to do to succeed throughout the pandemic and on the other side of it. There's no manual for that. And David, you had a great introduction.
My earphones are so loud.
when David introduced us, he mentioned that there's
It doesn't
there's a
ever
lot of
work, I swear to God.
Do we have somebody off of mute? I'll keep going. We'll do what we can do here. So, can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that, everybody. A little technical difficulty. So, everyone's heard the give a man a fish proverb, right? You give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach him how to fish, and he eats forever. So what we plan on doing today is taking a teach you how to fish approach with this webinar to describe some processes that you can use immediately and on an ongoing basis, and areas of concern that you should use those processes to address. So as promised in the title, we're going to tell you the 4 essential steps to cope with pandemic risk. These 4 steps, which are represented by the circle in the middle here, are identify, analyze, control, and finance. We'll walk you through that method, which you'll be able to use in pretty much anything that you do. And then we'll talk about 4 categories of business risks using the acronym C.O.P.E that we believe require special attention. So that's that cyber, operations, public, and employees. So we'll discuss what those areas were like before this all started, when it was business as usual, and what's new about these types of concerns since after the coronavirus pandemic began. So these risk categories can get really deep, but we're going to only briefly touch on each of them. And we may even do more webinars on specific topics if the demand is there. So you can let us know about that at the end. So the circle is the 4 steps. The squares are the areas that we need to use those 4 steps to work on. So we're going to start talking about the action steps first. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, Lee Goldberg, who has a confession to make. Lee, I don't think we hear you. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. I think we're trying to get Lee on here. David, if you could unmute Lee. He should be under LG. Sorry, everybody. Let's go ahead and continue here. I'm sorry for the delay. So I will work on Lee's confession.
Can you hear me through the speaker here?
Lee, there, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm on the phone and on the speaker. So if you can hear me, that's great. Thank you. So my name's Lee Goldberg, and I'm a control freak. Just kidding. Not really a control freak, but maybe I am. But I'm a control freak is a mnemonic device we came up with to help you remember the 4 steps to managing your business risk. Once you understand these 4 steps that are completed in sequence, the anxiety with the potential unknown will begin to dissolve, and it's as simple as gaining freedom with control. So step 1 is to identify what are my risks. Step 2 is to analyze how important are they to me and my business. Step 3 is to control, how do I prevent them? And step 4 is to finance, how do we pay for them? These are the 4 steps to cope with business risks. And to be honest, it really applies to any sort of risk, whether that be personal or business, and in a business sense, pandemic related or any other types too. And there you have it. I'm a control freak, and we'll get into each of these 4 steps into more detail here. So step 1 is to identify risk. we can't begin to address any risk or problems until we know what they are. There are a number of ways to identify risk. The easiest and my favorite is to sit down with pencil and paper and to determine who or what is trying to take my business or money from me. Is it consumers, customers, employees, vendors, creditors, stakeholders? You can make this list and better determine who are these sources. A few other methods are using checklists, surveys, inspections, and interviews. In the event that you don't have cybersecurity and employment practices checklists or site safety surveys or hurricane recovery checklists lying around, don't worry. These types of things are available at no cost, and qualified professionals can walk you through them pretty easily and quickly. It doesn't have to be complicated to be comprehensive. Here are a few that we generally use with our clients. There's an organizational risk assessment checklist, a simple yes, no, takes a few minutes to complete. Cybersecurity scorecard that you can do in accordance with your IT individual or third-party company. An employment practices scorecard. This is really like a human resources checklist, how you're interacting with your staff. And a crime and fraud exposure scorecard. The unfortunate thing about this is there's no business that's immune to potential theft from customers or employees. So this is something really important to focus on. So, and I want to point out that up to this point, you haven't spent $1 to identify your risk. All of this has just been a few minutes of your time just to sit down and think. Step 2 is to analyze the risks that have been identified. This is where we get the lay of the land and determine what our priorities are so that we can turn them into actions. The first 2 steps of this process are made up of mostly just thinking. We haven't spent any money yet. So here's how the thought process works with each of the risks that we've identified. And you could take a look at this colorful graph here. There's threats. Threats are the likelihood of something happening. The pandemic, the threat was really low. It happens once every 100 years. Vulnerability is us measuring its impact on us or on our business. This is different for every business, an accounting office, a day spa, and everything in between. The consequence is how bad can it be? It's the figure that we come up with. Can we manage versus complete business failure and shutdown? So in the analyze step, we take a look at each risk that we've identified, determine its likelihood and its consequences, and develop a priority list. You're busy running your company, doing what you do great, so just having them in your head isn't likely to get anything accomplished, right? We all have to-do lists that don't necessarily get to-do'd. Well, we've all been there. So we help our clients find success by helping with this analysis step and then attacking the major issues first and moving down the list as the time allows, depending on the importance to you and your business, of course. For example, during this analysis step, you might determine that being prepared for post-hurricane recovery, which has low to moderate likelihood in any given year, but could put you out of business if you're not ready for it, may be a higher priority than doing a full ergonomics evaluation for your office staff. This is, of course, going to vary from business to business and industry to industry. Okay, so we've identified risks, we've analyzed them, we've relied mostly on brain power or our trusted advisors, and now we're ready to take the next step. This one is where good businesses separate from great ones. Controlling risk is where all of the magic happens. But more importantly, where ideas turn to action, and if you choose, small commitments turn into significant long-term savings for your business. If we look back at the threat versus consequence chart, this is going to help us reduce our vulnerability and or reduce the consequence by moving that star into the yellow or even off the chart altogether. So a few examples, we've identified that a pandemic is not just an early 20th century problem. It's now plausible to repeat in the near future, like in a few months from now. So the threat is moderate to high, but after today, we're going to be less vulnerable because of the actions we take, and therefore reduce the consequence on our business. Just like with a pandemic, having a disaster recovery plan won't reduce the likelihood of a hurricane. There's one spinning off the coast of the Carolinas right now, the tropical storm, that is. But we can reduce the economic impact or consequence to our business by getting back to business faster. This is the most effective and least costly approach to managing business risk, period. For the purpose of this discussion, we're focusing mostly on economic risk, right? That businesses are economic entities, and while there is, of course, a human component to everything we do and the risks that we face, and controlling those risks can help people be happier and healthier, we are just going to stick to the economic risks for the purpose of this presentation. There's a cost associated with controlling risks. It costs time, it costs resources, or it costs money. The most important question regarding controlling risk is not, can I afford to, but can I afford not to? Remember, I'm not selling anything here today unless you need hand sanitizer or toilet paper. In that case, I have a guy. A workers' compensation claim stays with you for 4 years. A bad Yelp review may stay with you for a decade, and most businesses never recover from a data breach. There are 3 methods to controlling risk. First is avoidance. Just don't do it. This is only realistic in particular circumstances, of course. Don't set off fireworks inside your building, for example. You can avoid unnecessary exposure by having employees work from home, or in similar terms, if it's raining outside, don't go outside. Or if you don't want to get your car into an accident, don't drive it, and don't serve raw seafood at your restaurant to avoid customers getting sick from food poisoning. Prevention, purchasing protective equipment, in this case, Steven here, he's my accountant, just kidding. When employees come back to work, have proper measures been taken to keep them and your customers safe from the spread of the virus? It's a question you need to ask yourself to prevent. In our simpler example, if it's raining, go outside, but bring an umbrella. Plan your commute or route during off-peak traffic hours, or have a trained seafood handler inspect those oysters before sending them to my table. And then finally, reduction. If we can't avoid, and we've done what we can to do to prevent, how can we reduce the consequence of that risk? Like my buddy here not tripping on his yellow extension cord while disinfecting high-touch areas outside of this building. More simply, park and walk in covered areas to reduce your chances of getting wet. In our rain example, you either go inside, you use an umbrella, or you do what you can to reduce the inevitability of getting wet. With driving and not getting your cars into an accident, you can train your company drivers with defensive driving and awareness techniques. And in our example of the restaurant, you put a disclaimer on your menu about the risk of consuming uncooked seafood before sending those yummy oysters to my table. These are a few forms that we share with our clients to help them control their risks. Fire emergency and evacuation plans, driver acceptability matrix, which happens to be my personal favorite. There's an astronomical cost associated with hiring the wrong individual, relying on your insurance company to accept somebody with 12 speeding points on their license and 2 DUIs, and then you find out that they're not a reliable employee. If you do your own analysis up front, you're going to save an exponential amount of money in the form of hiring, training, and termination by retaining that one employee for a long time. A business continuity plan. What happens if something happens with A, B, C, or D, owners, partners, managers, rainmakers, salespeople? And an employee handbook, benefits manual. This is how you conduct yourself. These are the code of ethics. This is our honor policy. So part of the magic with proper controls is that it can have a favorable impact in the upcoming segment, part F of I'm a Control Freak. As we identify and analyze, it will appear that there are more threats than we have considered before taking the time to even think about it. That's a good thing. Knowing and controlling at minimal cost will create a more resilient business and make the following step much more effective. The first place that money comes from is from your business. You can invest actual money along with time and wages in developing risk control methods, or you can end up sending a multiple of that investment to a defense attorney. It's one or the other. The other component to financing is to purchase insurance. Now, I know all of you have been buying lots of different types of insurance for many years, but I'm a certified insurance nerd, so humor me for just a second here. Insurance is what we call a transfer of risk, passing the Tom and Jerry bomb among each other. Just keep passing the issue, the risk down the line. That's the transfer. You pay a premium to the insurance company, a fixed amount of money, a known quantity that you can budget for. And in exchange, the insurance company holds a certain amount of money in a figurative bucket to pay for consequences that your insurance policy covers. Makes sense, right? You're transferring your risk to your insurance company. So since you've been buying insurance for years, you've already been participating in this process. You're already financing risk. You buy liability insurance for a known premium, so you don't have to stroke $1 million check if someone gets hurt by your business. You buy collision insurance for a known premium, so you don't have to buy a new car with your own money if yours gets totaled. Most businesses have the standard insurance policies like general liability, property insurance if you have buildings or equipment, auto coverage if you have vehicles owned in the business's name, and workers' compensation if you have employees, of course. But there are also lots of less common types of insurance that you can buy to help you control a lot of the risks that we'll discuss today. Cyber insurance, directors and officers insurance, employment practices insurance, and a number of others. The exciting part that I promised you from a few slides ago is with just preliminary controls and the right representation, you can recoup a portion of your control investment by saving insurance premium with superior underwriting and preferred credits. So insurance is powerful. For general liability, which every single business owner attending on this call carries, the annual cost doesn't even register in comparison to the amount of coverage provided. Over 20 years of a business's life to transfer this risk becomes a rounding error for the protection that it provides. The next slide is a representation of the average range of insurance premium for an employment practices policy. The cost of carrying that policy for 20 years and the average cost of a single claim. I mean, you can see the disparity here. As you can see, the cost to transfer this risk is so marginal, even with carrying the coverage for 20 years compared to a one-time out-of-pocket untransferred event, the transfer cost is about 1/3. And then the cyber liability. This is such a powerful example that over $80,000 for a single claim for a policy that costs a few $1,000s a year. In this scenario, even more importantly, the intrinsic value of the insurance policy is that it comes with cyber specialists to help restore the business in addition to just paying damages as you would expect an insurance policy would. So insurance is not the end-all solution. In the 23 years our company has been doing business, we found that most businesses purchase required insurance via guidance from vendors or lenders. Think of insurance as their primary risk management method and believe they could be more strategic about managing risks. But something that we tell our clients all the time is that insurance doesn't prevent problems. It only provides money to pay for them after they've occurred. Maybe. I'm sure you can agree that doing what you can do to prevent the problem, or at least minimizing the impact, is a much better solution than relying solely on transferring risk to an insurance policy because, as you know, a policy is only as good as what it covers. And even then, you as the business owner still need to deal with the fallout. On that cliffhanging topic, I'm going to turn it back over to Doug Levy.
Thank you so much, Lee. I appreciate that. Okay, so I want this back up here in stark black and white, no pictures, no colors, no nothing. So insurance doesn't prevent problems. It only provides money to pay for them after they've occurred. Maybe. Why maybe? This is, there's a lot of different reasons, but this is why becoming or aligning yourself with a control freak is so important. We've seen so many clients who have experienced an insurance loss that they had coverage for, and they had no idea what to do with themselves while they waited for a check for the insurance company. So as we'll show you with some statistics in a minute, many of these people can go out of business. So take a perfect example is what's happening right now with which is all over the news, business income or loss of income or business interruption, which are all the same thing. Those types of claims that are arising from this COVID-19 pandemic, insurance companies really aren't paying them because they state that the premise of insurance is to pay for those losses when there is physical direct damage to a location. So there's lots of people that have gone out of business because their insurance didn't cover an income loss. And then if you look at a more kind of normal type scenario, what happens if your business is damaged by a hurricane? You call the insurance company and they tell you that they'll send an adjuster out eventually, and especially when there's a catastrophe, that could take a long time. What's that adjuster going to do? His only responsibility is to check your policy, put a price tag on what happened to you, make sure it's covered, and tell his company to cut a check eventually. That's it. What do you have to do in the meantime? You have to figure out how to get your employees back to work. You have to find a contractor to start the rebuilding process. You have to go through the whole rebuilding process. So it's important to understand the indirect costs of these things that could happen to you if you don't engage in this risk management process. So let's take a look at some of these indirect costs of experiencing an accident, lawsuit, or catastrophe. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. So your time, you could spend dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of hours dealing with some sort of incident or a lawsuit that drags on for years. You can lose revenue. You can lose productivity. The aggravation and stress can and will take years off of your life. You can lose employees. If you have some sort of downturn or stoppage, somebody that works for you that needs to continue to get paid may have to go elsewhere. And then you can have reputational harm that you could never recover from. Here's some statistics from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Following a disaster, 40% of businesses do not reopen at all, ever. Another 25% fail within 1 year. And over 90% of businesses that experience a disaster fail within 2 years. It ends up being that knockout blow, and they never recover from it. And this is something that can even happen, again, with insured incidents. That's why we're saying that insurance is not the end-all solution. So we've covered the 4 steps of this process, this identify, analyze, control, and finance. Now it's time to talk a little bit about the 4 areas of risk that we feel are most relevant right now. So while we're covering these topics, I want you to be thinking about your business. I'll be talking about different risks and threats. You write down the ones that resonate with you. And then the idea is that you become a control freak or get with a control freak and apply this identify, analyze, control, finance process to those things. We can, of course, help you with that. But let's take a look at this process. So it's important to recognize that types of business risk change over time. What we did before doesn't necessarily work today. So here's a few examples on the screen. So you've got, terrorism incidents or texting while driving, which wasn't even a thing. Then you got hurricanes, which used to just be a physical damage thing, but now we got to worry about internet and phone service. And now, of course, we have the coronavirus. So operating in this post-COVID-19 world presents some scary challenges to the business landscape. So we're going to talk about what those are and how they might affect your business, so you can decide how you want to protect your business against them and use the process that we've just outlined in order to do that. So let's talk about C.O.P.E. It's an acronym. We already said what it stands for. C.O.P.E. also means to deal effectively with something difficult, or to have the capacity to deal successfully with something. So I think we can all agree that that's what we're all trying to do right now with the uncertainty that we have. So we're going to talk about cyber operations, public, and employment. We'll start with cyber. So cyber risks. Let's look at what we would consider normal, everyday cyber-related risks that pretty much all businesses face. So it's important to maintain a secure and controlled computer network at your business location. So every business is using technology, whether it's for point of sale or processing transactions or databases or businesses that entirely depend on computers. We have risks related to maintaining security in that environment. And then we also have to make sure that the people that work for our company are educated, about all of the cyber scams that are out there. So you have phishing, which is like when you get an email that looks like it's from your bank telling you to log in, but some things are misspelled and some random words are capitalized and the grammar's kind of off. That's a phishing attempt of trying to get you to click on something and enter your credentials into a bogus portal. We have social engineering, which is really a type of fraud where I don't know if any of you have ever gotten an email from the CEO or president or accounting or CFO from your company saying, hey, I need you to wire me $16,000. I'm in an important business meeting and I can't talk off the phone. If that's ever happened to you, that's what social engineering is. Then you've got personally identifiable information, or PII, which we have to be careful about. We're not supposed to be sending certain types of information via email or sharing it with others. So the normal cyber risk before we all got laid out by this virus, we have challenges that we have to deal with on an ongoing basis. Now it's even worse. So now we have a lack of control over where our employees are working and what equipment they're using. So I have an employee that's working from home. Are they working at a coffee shop that just opened up and you're using an unsecure network and displaying, very important information or personally identifiable information on my screen? How can I control that? These cyber scams that we talked about have increased dramatically and become a lot more complex. And then to make matters worse, the stress and the distraction and the desperation that people are feeling are making them more susceptible to these schemes. So we have some additional layers here where my staff in particular is getting bombarded with all sorts of scams and phishing attempts and other things. And we have to make sure that we're addressing all of those. So that's some new information for us, right? So cyber attacks have increased 6 times. We have recreational hackers that are having uptick in activity. We have professional cyber criminals that are doing their thing. And like we said, we have these phishing attempts that have kind of soared lately. So this is one area that requires a lot of focus, especially if you have a bunch of employees working from home on their own equipment or on different networks. That's very, very, very important right now. The O in C.O.P.E is for operations risk. So before the business as usual, we have risks related to how are we staying ahead of competition? How are we delivering our products and services, and what can get in the way of that, whether it's an internet connection or a flat tire on a truck? What are we doing to protect our public image and our perception? How are we making sure that our Google reviews stay positive, et cetera, et cetera? So that's the normal landscape that everybody on this call is dealing with. What else are we dealing with now? So now, in this post-pandemic, environment, we have to worry about reopening strategies and doing those correctly. We have to make sure that we can adapt quickly, because now more than ever, adaptation is important. Otherwise, you're getting out of business. If you can't find the plexiglass to put between your register and the customer, you can't open. Additionally, all businesses' decisions are under the microscope. This is especially important when there's partners involved or investors involved. Partner relationships and investor relationships are challenging enough as it is. Now we have to think about the fact that every single thing that we do is going to be judged much more harshly than when it was business as usual, because as the next point indicates, the endangerment of our employees and our customers and our business resources is critical right now, right? So there's just an added weight to how we run our businesses, and we need to go through this identify, analyze, control, and finance approach to deal with these things. So this is another area where that's critical. The P in C.O.P.E is for public risk. So here we're looking at a public liability standpoint, which is, people getting hurt or people, causing damage to their stuff. So in a normal world, we got to put out our slip and fall, our slippery floor signs, right? So we all have to focus on keeping customers safe using reasonable precautions. We have to keep our products and services safe using best practices. And then we have to manage our safety on the roads with our drivers and things like that using, preferably using that matrix that Lee showed us. So now take this and multiply that times 1,000, right? So now we have infectious disease precautions that we weren't even thinking about before. We have social distancing methods that we have to use. We have to provide protective equipment and work with protective equipment, which can be challenging. And then these last two are very interesting. So the first thing here, the fourth thing, is dealing with sensationalism and reputational damage. So let's talk about this for a second. 6 months ago, let's say you have a retail store. 6 months ago, if you were to have somebody trip and fall in your store and break their arm and sue you for a bunch of money, nobody would ever hear about it, right? It's tree falls in the woods type of thing. Nobody's around to hear it. Nobody, it's not going to make the news. Nobody cares that somebody tripped and fell. It's just, it happens, and you move on with life, and you be more careful, right? What about today? What if somebody comes into your store and somebody just gets it in their mind that they got the coronavirus because the person that was helping them had what they thought was a dry cough? What's going to happen? Social media, news outlets, this is stuff that could put you under in a heartbeat, right? So we have to be a lot more careful, because what we do or what happens to people at our places of business is now, unfortunately, going to be a lot more visible to the outside world than anything used to. And this last one, this vultures and fraudulent claims, hopefully nobody here has ever been the victim of a fraudulent, lawsuit or insurance claim, or somebody dove in front of your car or something like that. But these types of things happen. And the reality is, the worse our economic situations are, the more of these things happen. It's just the nature of the beast that the frequency of these type of events increases with poor economic situations. And there's a lot of people in poor economic situations right now. And we've already seen an increase with people trying to cash in on stuff like this. It's unfortunate, but it's real. And that's why we're talking about it. So the whole landscape of what you have to do to be careful about the people that you serve has just gone a little nutso lately, right? And then this last letter in C.O.P.E, the E is for employment risk. So here we have the good old days. Everybody's reporting to work. There's not a mask in sight. The doctor isn't even wearing gloves yet. So what do we have to worry about back then in our employment landscape? We had to worry about typical employment type concerns: discrimination, harassment, wrongful termination, wage and hour issues. These things are very, very important and can cost a lot of money to deal with. A lot of you might be thinking that, well, Florida is an at-will state. I can fire somebody for any reason. Yes, you can you could terminate somebody for any reason. You just can't terminate them for a bad reason or an illegal reason. And these are the illegal reasons. And these issues do come up from time to time. That's the before. So now we have to stack something on top of that, because that's the trend here. It's unfortunate, but that's why we're having this conversation. So now we take our post-pandemic universe and we have to add new sick pay and leave provisions. How do I navigate the CARES Act and these other things where I have obligations to people? How do I protect my employees? So now we're dealing with personal safety and not just discrimination and wage and hour. We're dealing with sensitive health information. I want to open back up, and I think I need to take everybody's temperature, and I need to see if anybody's coughing. And, what am I allowed to do? There's lots of human resources questions and stuff like that. And then also another risk that I alluded to before is retention. We really have to focus on keeping the people that are important to our business. And that's not easy to do right now. When people need to make money, they need to maintain their income, they need to get paid. If we're not getting back into business fast enough or doing the things that are necessary to get back up to speed, we could lose people that we've spent years or possibly even decades investing in. So that's another part of the risk landscape here. Okay. So again, we've discussed this 4-step approach to dealing with business risk by magically transforming ourselves into control freaks or finding a control freak to work with so that we can identify, analyze, control, and finance these risks. And then we talked about 4 areas of business risk: cyber, operations, public, and employees, where you're not only dealing with business as usual, but you're also dealing with some additional dangers and concerns that you need to consider as you operate nowadays. So we've only scratched the surface here, and it's very possible that you'll have some questions that can't even be answered even after or during our Q&A session. But that's kind of the point, because we tried to teach you how to fish. So since you're now armed with this knowledge and the method to figure out what you need to do to avoid the knockout punch for your business, you should be in better shape moving forward. So let's do a quick reality check here. Everything has a cost. So addressing all of these risks comes with a price. The price can take a lot of different forms. It can be wages. You got to pay somebody on payroll to do something. It could be time, professional fees, buying insurance, or having to pay out of pocket for something that happens. We've told you the 4 steps. We've told you the 4 areas. These are the costs. And in reality, it's so important that you engage the right people to help you. Because if you're properly aligned with the right professionals, you're able to get many of these checklists and evaluations and risk control processes at little to no cost. So before you try attacking all of this on your own, spend some time, do some research, and see who's out there that can help you, because these costs really, really can be controlled, right? So the moral of the story here is this quote from Benjamin Franklin: "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." So this is where we engage in this process, because we realize that nobody's going to come save us. We realize that insurance doesn't prevent problems, and insurance often doesn't cover the problems that I have, and that there's a lot of other challenges that I'll have even if it does. So we really have to focus on prevention so that we don't become part of that statistic of businesses, 90% of businesses that cannot fully recover or go out of business within 2 years after a disaster. And I think we can all agree that this is a disaster that we're facing. And the importance here is obviously because your success is important to you, it's important to your families, everybody that you employ, and the people that they love, and for the communities that you serve. Wouldn't you agree? So the good news, which we've alluded to a few times, is that you don't have to go it alone. So not everybody is a control freak. Not everyone wants to be a control freak. Luckily, Lee and I and our crew, we're control freaks, and we're serving businesses in our community by providing these valuable services, often at little to no cost. We're honored that David and the Better Business Bureau have given us this opportunity during these very, very strange and challenging times to share this information with you and to have a conversation that's relevant to your ongoing success, in addition to what you can do right this second. So we sincerely hope that you found some value in this conversation, and we'd like to thank you for your time and for your attention. And I think we're at that point where we can open it up to any questions. And don't forget, you've got our contact information here. Email me. I'm Doug. Email me, and I'll get you those the HR toolkit and the guide for reopening, which is a great way to engage in this process. So that's all we have for you. Does anybody have any questions? You can hop into the chat window, and David will lob some questions at us.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We do have one question from Lisbeth Santiago. It's a lengthy one, so just bear with me. Her question is,
Sure.
Would it be wise to advise that all businesses reopening or have not closed to plan establish and publish the measures taken to secure risk of pandemic in a clear and evident way for employees, suppliers, providers, clients, and customers to minimize any claims towards the company? Meaning, we should be preventive to have control and avoid consequences, minimizing threats and vulnerability. Example would be post and web page measures taken, have employee meetings with HR, archive minutes, and email notifications to suppliers, customers, etc. Would this be an important step, be able to evidence and avoid claims and lawsuits?
This woman is my hero. Absolutely. Elizabeth, you hit the nail on the head. Everything that you just said is a proactive, preventative measure that allows you to engage with your clients, engage with the public, and clearly state what it is that you're trying to do, and also what you have no intention of doing. So you can even say something like, listen, we're not saying that you're not going to get the coronavirus here. We don't know. But that is a perfect example of a well thought out method. And it really just comes down to how. So I think you hit the nail on the head. That is an extremely healthy approach in comparison to saying, well, can I just have everybody sign a waiver? So yes, 100% yes. We believe that making your policies and procedures clear to everyone who has to interact with your company, whether it be an employee or a member of the general public, fantastic methods, and that really does incorporate a lot of this process that we've discussed today. So that's a wonderful, wonderful outlook on it. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions, David? It looks like Michael wants to see the text of that question because Lisbeth really did hit the nail on the head. So I think that would be great for other people to see if she's able to share.
Yes, definitely. The question is saved in the chat box. If anyone just wants to copy and paste it, I will get that question. And we usually have a chat box kind of history that is also provided to us with the recording of the webinar. So I'll make sure to send that over via email. It seems like that's the only two questions that we have. Are there any other questions before we close out the webinar for today?
I know we're on limited time here, so if anybody does have questions or really wants to discuss any of this in further detail, feel free to contact us. That's what we're here for. That's why we've done this. We wanted to get you some valuable information, and we're here to help you take any of these thoughts or processes further.
We do have one more question from Randy Walker. His question is, what insurance for income protection?
Randy, that's a great question. So there's different types of insurance for income protection, and it really depends on what we're trying to insure ourselves against. And that's become a really hot topic nowadays because, again, somebody buys an insurance policy, they see that it has business income or loss of income protection on it. And they think, okay, well, I have protection if I lose my income. They get told to close down and they're losing income. So they file a claim on loss of income. The devil's always in the details though, right? So when you look at the fine print, the insurance policies say that there needs to be direct physical damage to a location in order for there to be loss of income coverage. So you can get loss of income coverage if you get hit by a hurricane, or if you have a fire, or if a car comes through the front window of your salon and you have to close down for a couple of weeks while that's getting fixed. So there's income protection for a lot of different types of risks. So it would really come down to a conversation about what you're trying to protect against, and then matching that up with an insurance product that's available for it if there is one. There's a lot of cases where there just isn't one. But then there's also many that there are.
I guess Mr. Walker, based off the question he just asked, he also mentioned COVID-19. So I'm guessing his question is relating to any insurance for income protection regarding COVID-19.
Yes, at this time, so we really have seen, a lot of the experts in the insurance industry state that they didn't intend to provide coverage on your normal property policies and business owners policies. Nowadays, because this is such a big issue and because we're right in the thick of it, we have not seen anybody come out and offer a product today to protect against certain income loss. There are possibly policies that you can get that can protect you in the future. A lot of what we've seen actually has a coronavirus exclusion on it. But there are some products that may come out. It's kind of hard to do. It's kind of like getting windstorm insurance when a hurricane is 50 miles off the coast. But we are keeping our ear to the ground of the industry, because obviously this is a relevant topic, and Randy, a lot of people have similar questions and want to make sure that they can protect themselves moving forward. So as soon as there's insurance companies that are willing to put down their money and gamble on that type of risk, we'll be able to offer those to people.
Thank you, guys. Any other questions? All right, seems like all questions have been asked. For whatever reason, if there are any other questions that you might have post our presentation, please feel free to contact these two gentlemen. They will be more than willing to assist you. Also, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we will be providing this via email, and we will be posting it on our YouTube page. Once again, I would like to thank all participants, especially our two presenters, Doug and Lee. Thank you very much for all the information you've provided today. As they mentioned, this is just a general conversation. So if you, for whatever reason, want more details about the 4 risks that were mentioned today, please, once again, feel free to contact them. They will be more than willing to assist. They have definitely been helpful to us here at the BBB, and I'm sure that they're going to provide you with the same service. Once again, please be on the lookout for any other webinars that we will be hosting in the future. And please, everyone, be safe and take care.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day and a great rest of your week, guys.